Admiral Vex-Prime of the Galactic Dominion adjusted his tentacles around the command throne, watching the tactical display with smug satisfaction. The operation had gone perfectly, or so he thought. The humans' precious moon now bore a crater the size of their continent called Africa. Quite poetic, really. Status report, Commander Threx, Vex-Prime gurgled through his breathing apparatus. The lunar bombardment is complete, Admiral. Their satellite has been significantly altered, Threx replied, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. Intelligence suggests the humans are in complete disarray. As expected. Oh, how wrong they were. Vex-Prime had studied human behavior for cycles. Primitive bipeds, really. When faced with overwhelming force, they typically surrendered or fled. Simple psychology. The Dominion had conquered 47 species using identical tactics, and humans would be number 48. Just another Tuesday in the galaxy, but humans, as it turned out, were not like other species. Not even close. Commander Mira Santos stood in the underground bunker beneath Colorado, her jaw clenched as she watched the satellite feed. The moon, Earth's faithful companion for billions of years, now looked like someone had taken a cosmic ice cream scoop to it. The audacity of these alien bastards was breathtaking. "Ma'am, we're receiving communications from world leaders," reported Lieutenant Jake Miller, his voice barely steady. "They're asking for our response options." Mira turned to face the room full of military personnel, scientists, and what some might call the more creative minds of humanity. Dr. Elena Kowalski sat hunched over her tablet, already running calculations. General Marcus Webb paced like a caged tiger. And in the corner, looking far too calm for someone whose planet had just been attacked, sat Dr. Simon Cross, the man who'd once joked that he could weaponize a banana if given enough time. Options? Mira laughed, but there wasn't an ounce of humor in it. They want options? Gentlemen, ladies, they just declared war on Earth. Not just Earth, mind you. They attacked our moon. Our moon. That's like someone breaking into your house and kicking your dog. Dr. Cross cleared his throat softly. Actually, Commander, it's worse than that. They've disrupted our tidal systems, affected our climate patterns, and essentially vandalized a celestial body that's been with us since before complex life existed. This is personal. Personal, Webb repeated, stopping his pacing. I like the sound of that. Meanwhile, 300 kilometers above Earth's surface, Captain Rex Yamamoto of the International Space Station was having a very different conversation with his crew. The Japanese-American astronaut floated near the observation window, staring at the wounded moon with a mixture of grief and growing rage. "Houston, this is ISS. Are you getting the readings on the debris field?" Rex spoke into his communicator, watching chunks of lunar rock drift through space like the remnants of a shattered dream. "Copy that, ISS. We're tracking approximately 12,000 pieces of debris, ranging from pebble size to small asteroid classification. Rex, we need you and your team to begin immediate preparations." "Preparations for what, Houston?" A pause. "Then, Project Pandora. The President just gave authorization." Rex felt his blood turn to ice water, then immediately to liquid fire. Project Pandora wasn't supposed to exist. Officially, it didn't exist. But unofficially? Well, humans had been planning for extraterrestrial contact for decades, and not all of those plans involved welcome mats and gift baskets. "Copy that, Houston. Initiating Pandora protocols." Back on the Dominion flagship, Admiral Vex-Prime was beginning to feel the first tinges of what humans might call unease. The expected surrender broadcasts hadn't come. Instead, Earth had gone quiet. Eerily quiet. "Threx, are you monitoring their communications?" "Yes, Admiral, but there's something strange. Military channels have gone dark. Civilian broadcasts have ceased. It's as if the entire planet has simply stopped talking." Vex-Prime's tentacles curled tighter around his throne. In his experience, silence from a target species meant one of two things: total capitulation or preparation for something unpleasant. Given humanity's reputation for unpredictability, he was beginning to suspect the latter. Scan for technological signatures. Weapons charging, ships launching, anything that might indicate aggressive response. Sensors show nothing, sir. No weapons charging, no fleet movements, no defensive preparations. It's almost as if they've accepted defeat. Almost. Dr. Kowalski looked up from her tablet, her eyes bright with the kind of enthusiasm that would have terrified the alien fleet if they'd known to recognize it. Commander Santos, I've finished the calculations. The good news is that the moon's structural integrity is intact. The bad news is that they've created a gravitational anomaly that's going to affect our oceans for centuries. And the better news? Mira asked, because she could see that gleam in the physicist's eye. The better news is that they've essentially turned our moon into the universe's largest shaped charge. With the right application of force at the correct vectors, we can turn their little excavation project into a very large, very directed projectile. The room fell silent except for the hum of electronics and the soft whisper of air recycling systems. General Webb spoke first. You're talking about turning the moon into a weapon. Not the entire moon, Dr. Kowalski corrected with a slight smile. Just the part they so helpfully loosened up for us. Think of it as returning to sender. Dr. Cross leaned forward, intrigued. The energy requirements alone would be astronomical. How exactly do you propose to move several trillion tons of lunar material? That's where Project Pandora comes in, Mira said quietly. And why Captain Yamamoto is currently suiting up for the most dangerous EVA in human history. High above Earth, Rex was indeed suiting up, but not alone. His crew, astronauts Sarah Kim, Vladimir Petrov, and Maria Gutierrez, were preparing for what might be humanity's most desperate gamble. The ISS had been equipped with certain modifications over the years. Modifications that were supposed to remain theoretical. Rex, came the voice of Dr. Janet Williams from Mission Control. Pandora Package Alpha is ready for deployment. Are you sure about this? Rex looked at his fellow astronauts, each of them strapped with enough experimental technology to power a small city. Or destroy a large fleet. Jan, they blew up our moon. At this point, I'm sure about everything. What the Dominion fleet didn't know, what their intelligence had failed to grasp, was that humans had spent the better part of a century preparing for this exact scenario. Not specifically the moon being attacked, but the idea that something out there might not appreciate humanity's existence and decide to do something about it. Humans, it turned out, were very good at preparing for things they hoped would never happen. The Pandora project had been born from a simple question asked by a particularly paranoid physicist in 2157, what if we needed to fight something that could destroy planets? The answer, as it developed over decades of secret research, was elegantly simple and utterly terrifying. You don't fight something that can destroy planets with conventional weapons, you fight it with the planets themselves. Admiral Vex-Prime was beginning to wish he'd chosen a different target. The silence from Earth was lasting far too long, and his tactical officers were starting to report anomalies in their sensor readings. Admiral, Threx's voice carried a note of concern, we're detecting some unusual activity in Earth's upper atmosphere. Energy signatures that don't match any known human technology. Specify unusual. Quantum fluctuations, sir. Massive ones. It's almost as if they're manipulating spacetime itself around their planet. Vex-Prime felt his three hearts skip a beat. Quantum manipulation was theoretical even for the Dominion. If humans had somehow developed practical applications, impossible. Their technology is centuries behind ours. They barely achieved interplanetary flight 50 years ago. Nevertheless, sir, the readings are unmistakable. And Admiral, there's something else. What? The debris field from the moon bombardment. It's moving. On Earth, in the underground bunker, Commander Santos was coordinating what might have been the most complex military operation in human history. 17 nations had contributed technology, personnel, and resources to Project Pandora. Not because they'd known about it, but because they'd been building components for what they thought were separate, unrelated projects. The beauty of human paranoia was its distributed nature. No single government had the complete picture, but together, they'd built something magnificent and terrible. Pandora Control, this is ISS. Package Alpha is deployed and nominal. Beginning orbital insertion sequence. Dr. Kowalski looked up from her monitoring station. Commander, Pandora Alpha is showing green across the board. The quantum field generators are stable, and we're getting positive feedback from the lunar debris field. Time to activation? 17 minutes, 34 seconds. After that. She paused, looking almost apologetic. After that, God help anyone standing between us and that alien fleet. Admiral Vex-Prime was no longer feeling smug. The energy readings from Earth were climbing exponentially, and his fleet sensors were detecting something that should have been impossible. The pieces of the moon they'd blasted apart were accelerating. Not drifting, not falling, but accelerating with purpose and direction. Fleet status, immediate, he commanded. All vessels report ready, Admiral, but sir, recommend we consider tactical withdrawal. These energy readings, we don't retreat from primitive species, Commander. But as Vex-Prime watched his tactical display, he began to understand that humanity might not be as primitive as he'd assumed. The debris field was organizing itself into geometric patterns, each piece of lunar rock moving with impossible precision, and they were all pointing directly at his fleet. In the ISS, Captain Rex Yamamoto floated before a control panel that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie rather than a space station. Which, in many ways, it did. Project Pandora represented the culmination of human ingenuity, fear, and the peculiar ability to turn impossible situations into engineering problems. Houston, Pandora Alpha is fully deployed. Quantum entanglement with lunar debris confirmed. Rex out. Rex looked out at the stars, then at the wounded moon, then at the alien fleet that thought they could hurt his species and walk away. He thought about his daughter back in California, about the billions of people looking up at the sky and wondering if tomorrow would come. Then he pressed the button, and humanity reminded the galaxy why evolution had made them apex predators. What happened next would be studied by xenobiologists and military strategists across the galaxy for generations. Assuming, of course, that any of Admiral Vex-Prime's fleet survived to tell the tale, the moment Captain Rex Yamamoto pressed that button, 12,000 pieces of lunar debris suddenly became 12,000 guided missiles. Not metaphorically. Literally. Each chunk of moon rock, from pebble to boulder, had been quantum entangled with Pandora Alpha's targeting system. Physics became humanity's weapon. By the 7 moons of Axiom, Admiral Vex-Prime whispered, watching his tactical display as the debris field rearranged itself into what could only be described as a 3-dimensional constellation of death. What are they doing? Commander Threx's 4 eyes were blinking so rapidly they looked like emergency beacons. Admiral, the debris is accelerating beyond all known parameters. Each piece is generating its own propulsion field. This is impossible. Apparently not, Vex-Prime muttered, his tentacles now wrapped so tightly around his command throne that the metal was beginning to creak. Fleet-wide evasive maneuvers, now. But humans, as the Dominion was about to learn, had spent decades studying fleet tactics. Every science fiction movie, every military simulation, every war game had contributed to Project Pandora's targeting algorithms. Humanity's entertainment industry had inadvertently become their military research department. Dr. Elena Kowalski watched her screens with the focused intensity of a conductor directing a symphony of destruction. Lunar fragments are maintaining quantum lock. Velocity increasing. Impact probability. She paused, running the calculations again because the numbers seemed too good to be true. Commander Santos, we have a 97.4% hit probability across the entire enemy fleet. Commander Mira Santos felt something that might have been a smile tugging at her lips. The aliens had expected humanity to cower. Instead, they just weaponized the moon. Time to impact? 4 minutes, 18 seconds. General Marcus Webb was standing so still he might have been carved from granite, except granite didn't usually grin like a shark. Pandora control to all units. Commence Operation Lunar Payback. The name had been Dr. Simon Cross's idea. He'd argued that if you were going to turn celestial mechanics into a weapon of mass destruction, you might as well give it a name that would make the enemy think twice before attacking Earth again. High above the chaos, the International Space Station had become the control center for humanity's most audacious military operation. Sarah Kim monitored quantum field stability while Vladimir Petrov tracked individual debris trajectories. Maria Gutierrez coordinated with ground stations across 7 continents, each one contributing processing power to the targeting solution. "Rex," Sarah called out, "we're getting feedback from the lunar fragments. They're singing." Singing? The quantum entanglement is creating harmonic resonances as they accelerate. It's almost like... She paused, listening to the audio feed from the monitoring equipment. It's almost like they're angry. Rex laughed, a sound that would have chilled Admiral Vex-Prime's 3 hearts if he could have heard it. Angry moon rocks. The aliens picked the wrong species to mess with. Down in the bunker, Dr. Cross was monitoring something that the Dominion sensors couldn't detect, the psychological warfare aspect of Project Pandora. Humans had learned long ago that winning a battle was only half the equation. Breaking your enemy's will to fight was the other half. "Commander Santos, we're receiving communication attempts from the alien fleet. Put them through." Admiral Vex-Prime's image appeared on the main screen, his tentacles writhing in what human xenopsychologists had identified as extreme agitation. His translator rendered his words into clipped, desperate English. "Human command vessel, we demand immediate cessation of hostilities. Your response is disproportionate to our limited action." Mira stared at the alien commander for a long moment, then began to laugh. Not the polite chuckle of diplomatic negotiations, but the deep, genuine laughter of someone who just heard the funniest joke in the galaxy. "Limited action," she finally managed. "You blew up our moon and you call that limited action? Admiral, you've just learned the first rule of fighting humans. We don't do proportional responses." Vex-Prime's image flickered as his ship's communications array struggled with the quantum interference from the approaching debris field. "Your species is insane. This level of retaliation violates 17 different galactic warfare conventions." "We never signed those conventions," General Webb interjected, stepping into view of the camera. "We weren't invited to sign those conventions. You know why? Because you all thought we were too primitive to matter." "Well, congratulations, Admiral. You just discovered how primitive species fight back." The communication cut off as the first wave of lunar debris reached the Dominion fleet's outer perimeter. What followed could only be described as beautiful, if you appreciated the aesthetics of physics being used as a weapon. Each piece of lunar rock had been accelerated to precisely calculated velocities, taking into account the target ship's mass, armor configuration, and structural weak points. The Dominion had superior technology, but they'd never faced an enemy that could turn the battlefield itself into ammunition. The cruiser Axiom's Pride, positioned on the fleet's left flank, was the first to experience humanity's lunar vengeance. A chunk of moon rock the size of a small building struck its primary reactor housing at 17,000 km/h. The resulting explosion lit up the space around Earth like a second sun. "Direct hit on target designation Alpha 7, reported Lieutenant Jake Miller, his voice professionally calm despite the fact that he was watching the most spectacular military engagement in human history. "Enemy vessel has been neutralized." Admiral Vex-Prime felt his command ship shudder as debris impacts began pounding his shields. The humans hadn't just turned the moon into a weapon, they'd turned it into 12,000 individually targeted weapons. Each piece of debris was following a different trajectory, making evasive maneuvers nearly impossible. Fleet status: he commanded over the sound of klaxons and emergency alerts. "We've lost 6 vessels, Admiral," Threx shouted back. "The Crimson Talon, Void Hunter, Stellar Fang, Dark Wing, Iron Claw, and Axiom's Pride are all confirmed destroyed. The remaining ships are reporting heavy damage. Return fire. All batteries, full spread." The Dominion fleet unleashed everything they had. Plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, singularity bombs, energy weapons that could boil oceans and crack continents. The space around Earth became a light show of destruction that could be seen from Mars, and the lunar debris kept coming. Dr. Kowalski watched the enemy barrage with professional interest. "Commander, they're targeting the debris field with area of effect weapons." "Smart, but ultimately futile." "Why futile?" Mira asked, though she suspected she knew the answer. "Because we're not just using the debris as projectiles. Each fragment is also a quantum transmitter. Even if they destroy 90% of the fragments, the remaining 10% will recalibrate and adjust their targeting solutions based on the data from the destroyed pieces. The system actually gets more accurate as they shoot at it." General Webb shook his head in amazement. "We've turned their own defensive fire into our targeting system." "Essentially, yes." The Dominion fleet was learning this lesson the hard way. Every shot they fired provided the lunar fragments with more data about their ship's positions, capabilities, and weaknesses. The debris field was adapting in real time, becoming more precise with each passing second. Admiral Vex-Prime watched in growing horror as his fleet was systematically dismantled by what amounted to flying rocks guided by impossible physics. The humans had somehow managed to violate several fundamental laws of warfare, not to mention a few laws of physics. "Sir," Commander Threx's voice was barely audible over the chaos, "recommend immediate tactical withdrawal. We cannot maintain defensive operations against this, whatever this is. We don't retreat from primitive species." "Admiral, with respect, these are not primitive species. They've weaponized their planet's satellite. They're using quantum mechanics as a delivery system. Our intelligence reports were completely inadequate." Another massive explosion rocked the command ship as a particularly large chunk of lunar material found its way through their shields and into their secondary hull. Vex-Prime's tentacles finally loosened their grip on the command throne as he accepted what his pride had been refusing to acknowledge: humanity was not what the Dominion had expected. Back on Earth, Commander Santos was coordinating the final phase of Operation Lunar Payback. "Pandora control to ISS. How's our ammunition supply?" Captain Rex's voice crackled through the communications array. "Still have approximately 4,000 fragments with active quantum locks. More than enough to finish the job. Pandora control to all ground stations. Initiate Phase 2. Phase 2 was Dr. Cross's contribution to the operation. If Phase 1 was about demonstrating humanity's ability to turn their own satellite into a weapon system, Phase 2 was about making sure the lesson stuck. Across Earth, 17 different installations activated secondary systems that had been disguised as everything from radio telescopes to weather monitoring stations. In reality, they were quantum broadcasters, designed to send a very specific message across the galaxy. The message was simple, elegant, and terrifying in its implications: the complete technical specifications for Project Pandora, transmitted on every major galactic communication frequency. Admiral Vex-Prime, desperately trying to coordinate his fleet's retreat, intercepted the transmission and felt his 3 heart stop beating for several seconds. The humans weren't just defending themselves. They were advertising. "By the Ancient Ones," he whispered, reading the technical data streaming across his displays. "They're telling the entire galaxy how to do this." Commander Threx looked up from his damage control reports. "Sir? They're not keeping this technology secret. They're sharing it. With everyone." The implications were staggering. If every species in the galaxy suddenly had access to planet-scale weapons technology, the balance of power would shift overnight. The Dominion's technological advantage would become irrelevant when every inhabited world could potentially turn its moons, asteroids, or debris fields into guided missile systems. "Signal the fleet," Vex-Prime ordered quietly. "Full retreat. Maximum speed." "Sir, should we transmit a formal surrender?" Vex-Prime looked at his tactical display, where the remaining fragments of Earth's moon were still pursuing his ships with mechanical determination. The humans had turned their moon into a weapon, shared the technology with the galaxy, and were now chasing his fleet away from their solar system with the debris from their own satellite. "No, Commander. I don't think they're interested in our surrender. I think they're interested in making sure we never come back." As the Dominion fleet limped away from Earth at maximum warp, they left behind the wreckage of 8 major warships and the shattered remains of their reputation. More importantly, they left behind a species that had just announced to the galaxy that attacking Earth was a very bad idea. Dr. Kowalski looked up from her monitoring station as the enemy signatures disappeared from their sensors. "Commander, the alien fleet has left Earth's local space. All remaining lunar fragments are returning to stable orbit." Commander Santos nodded, then turned to address the room full of personnel who had just participated in humanity's first interstellar military victory. "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we've sent our message." General Webb was already thinking ahead. "What about the technical specifications we broadcast?" Dr. Cross smiled the quiet smile of someone whose chess game was 3 moves ahead of everyone else's. "Oh, those? Those were completely accurate technical specifications. For a system that requires Earth-specific gravitational field, magnetic field, and quantum resonance patterns to function properly." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "You mean?" Mira began. "I mean, we just told the entire galaxy exactly how to build a weapon that only works if you're defending Earth. Every other species that tries to replicate Pandora will discover that their planetary conditions won't support the quantum entanglement matrices." Lieutenant Miller looked up from his communication station. "Sir, we're receiving messages from approximately 47 different star systems. They're all asking the same question. Which is, how much would it cost to hire humans as military consultants?" Commander Santos looked around the bunker, at the people who had just turned humanity's greatest weakness, their isolation, into their greatest strength. They'd been alone in the galaxy, ignored by advanced civilizations, dismissed as primitive and irrelevant. Not anymore. "Draft a response," she said finally. "Tell them we're very reasonable. As long as nobody tries to blow up our moon." High above Earth, Captain Rex Yamamoto watched the last of the lunar debris settle into a new orbital pattern. The moon was scarred now, bearing the permanent mark of humanity's first contact with hostile alien life. But it was still there, still Earth's faithful companion, still pulling the tides and lighting the night sky, just with a few more options for dealing with unwelcome visitors. "Houston, this is ISS. Operation Lunar Payback is complete. Earth is secure." "Copy that, ISS. Welcome to the galactic community, Rex." "Population, us." Rex laughed, looking out at the stars with new understanding. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew they weren't. They were just the species you didn't want to make angry. The aliens had bombed Earth's moon, expecting humanity to surrender. Instead, they'd learned why evolution had given humans the ability to throw rocks really, really hard. Some lessons the galaxy would remember.